Hello everyone, Tina here. I hope your day is going wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me. Well, I am here today for Papertrey Ink and I am excited to share a project using the pumpkin house die set. This is such a fun, it's like playing with paper dolls. It's such a fun die set. We're going to create a card. I actually have a card to share with you that we're going to be creating today. It looks very dimensional because of all the textures and layers in the die set, but it's really not that dimensional. It'll fit perfectly in an A2 envelope. You can see here. There is a few layers, but I love creating scenes, and I love this that it could be a just because card because there's no sentiment on here. So we are going to recreate this card using the pumpkin house die set today. So let's jump in and grab some cardstock, and we're going to do a little bit of die cutting. To create my oval and then also the grassy border, we have 2 extra die sets. This is the Love to Layer ovals. It's a 3-piece die set. We're going to use the largest oval in here to create our background, and then to create the grassy bottom of our scene, we're going to use the grassy edge die. We're going to actually create a couple layers with this. So let's bring in some cardstock and take our die set out. I have it on a magnetic sheet for storage. It just makes it easier. Okay, I have lots of cardstock. We're going to die cut everything out at once, and then we can put everything together. It's pretty easy to create this fun little scene. For my background, I do have an A2 panel of, this is Spring Rain cardstock. Okay, and I'm also going to bring in another sheet to die cut out our oval here. So we'll die cut this out with Spring Rain. For our white cardstock, we are going to take the ladder here, and then we also have, there's a little circle that I'm going to add to our white cardstock that goes behind a door window, or it could be a window on your pumpkin. It's your preference to mix and match. There's also a little fence. We're going to die cut one of those out, and then we have this little piece has a whole bunch of little polka dots in it. Now it's going to die cut some very tiny circles. But I tell you, oops, there's another little die there. I don't mind adhering the tiny little circles. These go on the mushrooms. But it creates so much detail on these little mushrooms. So I'm going to die cut out some little circles a couple of times to decorate some mushrooms. And speaking of mushrooms, I have our red cardstock here. This is Pure Poppy. And we're going to die cut out the tops of our mushrooms with Pure Poppy. I want 2 of the larger mushrooms and then 1 of the smaller mushrooms. Now the mushrooms are layerable, so this can go on top of the base layer. Let me show you. It'll fit perfectly right on top of the base layer of our mushroom. So to create that base layer, we need some classic craft cardstock. And so we'll die cut that out. Now along on the classic craft, we're going to die cut out our tree. There's 2 different sizes of trees here, and I think they're fabulous. I love the swirlies on here. There's leaves that you can adorn with them, but I just think they're super fun. And I'm going to use this one here, the longer one. We'll use the shorter one. No, use the longer one for a tree. That's all the color. Oh, we have our other little mushrooms here. So with our classic craft, we have our tall tree, and we're going to die cut out 2 of these mushrooms and 1 of the smaller ones. And then we have spring moss. This color cardstock, we're going to also die cut out our Love to Layer largest oval with this one. So with the Spring Rain and then our Spring Moss, we're going to die cut out these 2 with the ovals. With Ripe Avocado, I'm going to take the swirly vines and we're going to die cut out 2 vines. Maybe we'll put it towards the top. I'm going to put the vines towards the top because I want to use the leftover to create a little hillside with this. So with ripe avocado, the vines, and then we have this color cardstock here. This is Harvest Gold. That's going to be the perfect moon. And I don't know if you can tell, but the moon has embossed detail that is, or debossed detail that is just fabulous. I'll die cut that out there. This is Summer Sunrise. I'm going to create a door. And the door has debossed detail that looks like wood. So we'll die cut this out. And then we have some dark chocolate cardstock. With the dark chocolate, there are some hinges for our door. And there's a doorknob. We'll die cut this out. And then that window, or the window for the pumpkin, or the window for the door that I mentioned, that we're going to put the circle behind here. We're going to die cut this out with dark chocolate also. Now our pumpkin needs a stem, so we're going to take our pumpkin stem and die cut that out with dark chocolate. And then for our pumpkin, I have our orange zest, and it creates the perfect pumpkin. We're going to take this largest, and there is debossed detail on here too that just make this come to life. So I'm going to add this, and then all the layers to go with it. There's 2 layers to go with the pumpkin. We're going to add this in here, and then we have some stars. There's 2 stars, and I want 1 large one and 2 small ones. And when I die cut out my oval with my spring rain, I'm going to die cut out, put these little stars in the corner, and I'm going to die cut out, again, 2 large and 1 small. And that's all the die cutting that we're going to do. So I have a lot to die cut. I'm going to run these through my die cut machine, and I will be right back. Okay, I went ahead and die cut everything out. We're good to go. Now I did mention we're going to create a hillside with this after I cut my vines out. So I'm going to take my scissors, and for the most part you're probably not going to be able to see this with all the layers, but I just wanted some darker green. So there is a hillside. To create my grassy area, the reason we cut out an oval is to continue on the shape of our background oval. So I need to, since it's perfectly oval from the top to bottom, I want to take my grassy edge or grass edge die, and I am going to, it's an open end, which makes it fabulous. So you can go as high or as long as you want. I'm going to die cut out a grassy edge about right here. And then I'm going to flip it around and go a little bit lower and cut out a smaller edge so we could double up on our grass just to give it an extra look of dimension. So I'm going to run this through. This is Spring Rain again. I'm going to run this through my die cut machine, and I'll be right back. So I die cut out my grass. Now we have 2 different layers, and they'll be perfect to layer together. And then the detail that is on our Love to Layer oval will continue all around the bottom of our oval, and I love that. I love the debossed detail on all of these, and it just adds to the effect. So, and you know what we're going to do too? We might have to trim this down. I don't think you're going to be able to see this one, but I'm going to layer it here. And then I'm going to flip this around and just trim around. You could take your oval die and run your green cardstock through, your ripe avocado through if you wanted to. But like I said, I don't think you're going to be able to see this after we add all the layers. So I'm just cutting it to the edge here. I think if you do see it, you'll just see a very corner part of it. Okay, we are ready to build a little pumpkin house, which is just super fun. I do have a piece of our Spring Rain that we're going to be doing ink blending on. We're going to do ink blending on all of these using just a few inks. So I picked some Regal colors because it is going to be a night sky. So we have some Regal inks here. We have Pure Poppy, we have Ripe Avocado, Honey Nut, Dark Indigo, and Dark Chocolate. We're going to use these 5 inks to do a little bit of shading on all of our elements. We're going to start with our background and add a little bit of dark indigo. Now I want to create a little bit of a halo that's coming out of the moon, and to do that I am going to bring in my lemon tart ink, and I'll show you that's the last thing we're going to add in just a minute. We're going to start by adding color at the very top of our panel, and then we're going to fade out about 2/3 of the way down. To do that, I'm going to use my dark indigo ink, and then I'm going to use my blending brush, and we're just going to pick some ink up, and we're going to go really heavy on the top. I decided to switch from my blending brush to my blending tool. This way I can get it a little bit more darker on the top. I think the blending brush is great for fading, but if you want to get it really dark on the top, the blending tool will just deposit more ink. So I'm going to set this aside, let that dry, and then we're going to take our oval and we're going to go around the edges of our oval. I'm not going to be worried about the bottom. This is a great place where you can hold it without getting your hands inky. But if you go from the bottom, that's where our grass is going to be. So we're just going to, I want to go really heavy on those edges. This way it brings out the embossed detail, the debossed detail. I keep calling it embossed, but it's debossed. I'm going really heavy along these edges because I really like that dark night sky look on the edges. And then it's kind of creating a halo because it's lighter on the inside. I'm going to add a little bit more color to the right side because this is where our moon's going to be, and that's where we're going to add in our lemon tart. Okay, and we're going to pick up some ink, and then I'm going to add a little bit of this in our background so it looks like our moon will have this halo look. I think that looks great. I'm going to bring in my dark indigo finger dauber, and then we have our stars. I'm going to set this aside to dry. We have our stars here. We're going to add a little bit of color to the edges of our star. So our stars have a little bit of ink blending on there. For my pumpkin, let's put this finger dauber back. We're going to use Pure Poppy. Pure Poppy ink is going to just be bold enough to highlight the orange or orange zest. And I'm just going to go around the edges. So we'll set these off to the side. We have our moon. For our moon, that's where the honey nut will come in handy. And again, I'm just adding a little bit. So there is our moon with a little bit of honey nut highlight. Now we have our tree. I'm going to use dark chocolate for this. So we're going to just add a little bit of shading, not too much around here. I think that looks nice. I'm not worried about my mushrooms. And we could add a little bit of shading to our pumpkin. I don't know if this will show up or not, but we'll just add a little bit. like so. Now for our doorway, I'm going to use the same dark chocolate, and carefully, actually I'm going to bring in some post-it note tape. This way I don't get my inky fingers all over my door. But I'm going to add just a little bit of color around the edges. Wonderful. So our doorway is done. And then we'll put the dark chocolate aside. And then we have ripe avocado. For this, I'm going to scoot up my craft mat here, and we're going to bring in our spring moss and our ripe avocado heel. And then we're going to add a little bit of shading to this. Kind of fade up. And for the most part, I'm going to leave the tips of this white. And then we're going to add a little bit of color to the edges here. And I think that's going to work. I'm not worried about the bottom because that's going to be covered with this piece. Okay. And that's all the ink blending that we're going to do. To build our pumpkin, it's very easy. We're going to first add our pumpkin stem. I'm going to use a small, actually let's use our tape runner. Going to use our tape runner, and we're going to adhere this first, and it lines up perfectly over the existing pumpkin trunk. And when you do this, I love it because it adds dimension. So there's our pumpkin trunk. And then we can flip over our middle layer, add some adhesive. This is actually our first layer of pumpkin. Now rather than using the top as a guide, you use the bottom as a guide, and it will line up perfectly. There's our first layer. Then we'll add our second and last layer. And this goes right in the bottom. Fits like a little puzzle. And then you can line up that top. It'll line up perfectly on this edge. And then our pumpkin is done and good to go. So cute. Now we're going to create our door. To create the door, it's very easy. We die cut out a circle, and then we have our hinges and our window. This can be a window on your pumpkin, but I put it on the door. But just because you can mix and match. There's no right or wrong. I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive behind my window here. We'll add the circle. I didn't want to use yellow cardstock behind my window. I used white because I didn't want to compete with my door. Now we're going to flip this around. We're going to add some adhesive behind here and put this on our doorway. I'm going to grab my tweezers now. So now we have the window and the door. Now, these pieces are small, but they are so important when you're adding it to the door because it adds so much character. I'm going to take my glue. We're going to go ahead and add the door knob, and then 2 little dots where we're going to add the door hinge. You see, I'm going to zoom in a little more. Okay, and then using a jewel picker upper, or a wax pencil, whatever you can use, or even your tweezers. I'm going to go ahead and add my door knob, or my door handle, I should say. And then these are hinges. Now you can't tell on camera, but there are score lines. So I'm going to attach one, and I'll attach the other, like so. Okay, I'll scoot it in a little bit. I'm going to wait just a second for this to dry, and then we're going to fold these at the score line. So these are actually hinges. You could actually create a hinge with this. So we'll wait for the glue to adhere really good, and then in the meantime we're going to build some mushrooms. We have the mushrooms tops and we have the mushroom bottoms. For this I'm going to use glue. I'm just going to add some glue to the base or the top of my mushrooms, are tops of mushrooms, and these are created to line up and leave a little bit of a bottom so you can see the bottom of the mushroom. I think that's so genius. And just line them up, and we'll do the bottom one, the smaller one. Okay, now what gives these mushrooms character are these little itty bitty dots. And I don't mind adding them because it really does add to the character of the card. So what we're going to do is just dot where we want those dots on our mushroom. And then we can place these little circles, kind of random, where we want them on our mushrooms. And I just think they look so adorable. Those little dots are just perfect. I just love the way they look. Okay. Now our little mushrooms are done. We'll set these off the side. Now our hinge to our door should be ready. And so we're going to bring this back. I mentioned there, excuse the inky fingers, but I mentioned there's a score line, and you would just fold it at the score line and fold it over like so. Sorry, I'm blurry. You just fold it over at the score line. And if you want to attach these to where the door can open and close, you could. I mean, how fun is that? But our door is done. Okay, so almost all of our elements are done except for our grassy area. So let's take our background. We're going to start by adding our hillside. So let's use our tape runner. And I'm going to add this first. And then we have our first layer. Now when I add the grass, I'm only going to add adhesive along the very bottom. Because I want to be able to tuck my pumpkin inside. So let's pick this up, and then just following along our oval, we can adhere this. And you can see where this came in handy, where it would cover this little edge over here. And then we have our next layer. I'm going to just go on the bottom of this too, because we're going to be doing some tucking with our mushrooms. And then we'll add this following along that curve. Okay, now we can add our pumpkin. I am going to put some foam adhesive behind my pumpkin. And I'm going to go as far over here as I can. And I think that's a good spot. Let's place our moon. We're going to put a foam square behind here. And the moon I want to overlap on here. A little bit of the foam adhesive showing, but that's okay. And I'm just going to put one foam square, and we can add our door. We're going to put that in the center, kind of tucking it under our grassy area. Okay, after we have this, we can go ahead and add our tree. The tree I want to overlap on my moon, so we'll add a little bit of adhesive, and then I might have to trim the bottom of our, I'm going to trim the bottom of our tree here. And then we can tuck this. So it's overlapping our, so our tree is overlapping our pumpkin and also our moon here. And then we have our little fence. Our fence, I'm going to do a tuck 2. Let's add some adhesive. I love that we can tuck this underneath to kind of ground it. So there's our little fence. Now we get to add our mushrooms. And we are going to cut some thin strips of foam adhesive for these. Now we're almost done. We're going to go ahead and take our card base. I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. We have an A2 size card base. We're going to go ahead and take our background panel and adhere this to our card base. After we have our panel adhered to our card base, we're going to go ahead and flip around our scene. And I'm going to use some foam tape, and we're going to add a little bit of dimension. I'm going to go ahead and remove the release paper, and then we're going to center this on the front of our card. Like so. And then we have our little stars, and we have our ladder. Let's go ahead and add some adhesive behind our ladder. And we can tack this down. I think that's a great spot. We have our little vines. For our smaller vine, I'm going to tuck it behind our tree trunk. And then for our larger swirl, I'm going to add it over the ladder and over the trunk to give it even more, a little bit of dimension. Now all we have left are a couple of stars. So let's flip these around. We're going to add a foam square behind here. Okay, I think we'll add one here and then one on the bottom. I like because it highlights the lighter area on top. Doesn't make it look so dark. Now that we have our stars adhered, I think the only thing that we're missing, two things. Okay, of course we're going to need a white gel pen, and then we're also going to need some stars. Some night stars, and for that I'm going to bring in some silver stickles. So we're going to take the white gel pen, and we are just going to, rather than splatter, I like to just put little dots, some distant stars, you can see. And then we're going to add a little bit of sparkle so that those stars glitter. Actually, we're not going to do that. Actually, I don't want to add the stickles. We're just going to add the white of the gel pen. Because, you know, I kind of like the matte look of this. So I think a white gel pen is the perfect added touch. Really creates a starry background. So that will complete my card for Papertrey Ink today. I hope you enjoyed my project. If you haven't had a chance to check out the brand new release, head on over to the Papertrey Ink shop. If items are out of stock, they will be restocked pretty soon. So just keep a lookout for that. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you